And okay, it should be, oh, let me go back a little bit. So bienvenidos, bienvenidas a todos y a todas. This is our team that will be with you today. Dr. Sue Hopewell is with us and Dr. Jody Slavic, and I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Sue, would you like to go first?
Happy to. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be with you. We actually really look forward to do this. As much as we would like to be face-to-face, this is, the next best thing. I am Sue Hopewell. I am the director of Literacy Squared. I have been with Literacy Squared since 2004. So it's been, we're going on 17 years at this point. In 2004, I was in one of the very, very first pilot schools to pilot Literacy Squared. Kathy and Olivia brought it to our school. And after a single year, I took a leave of absence from my district. I applied to the PhD program. I started working with Kathy as a student in much the same way Maria is working with us right now. And I never left. So I'm just thrilled to be with you. I want to echo what Monica was saying. Please ask questions today. Please put your thoughts in the chat. The professional development is only as good as your participation, and we want to learn from you just like you're learning from us, but really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you.
You want me to go to next? Hi, everyone. I'm Jody Slavic, and so happy to be here with you. I just want to give you all a round of applause for being here after a very long day, most of you in the classroom, and it is just a lot, and we appreciate that. All of us have been teachers. We know what it's like, but have never been teachers online, but have been in close communication with so many teachers, and we know how hard it is right now, especially. It's always hard, but we just really, really commend you for being here and wanting to extend your learning. So thank you all so much. I just finished the PhD program at CU Boulder. I've been with Literacy Squared since 2009 because prior to the PhD, I was lucky enough to have Literacy Squared in my district in school. And I was, like many of you, I was first a district person, coordinator, trying to help teachers figure out how to implement this. Then I went to I was a dual language coach at an elementary school, helping teachers figure this out. And then I actually went back into the classroom, second grade, to try to figure out how to actually do this in the classroom. So I've been where many of you are, where you're like just trying to make sense of it all. It took me many years to make sense of it. And that's what I'm going to share with you today, is kind of how I wrapped my head around things to help you wrap your head around things. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much. And I will turn it over to Maria.
Thank you, Jody. I echo what both Sue and Jody expressed. We're so glad to be with you today and recognize the tough circumstances in which we come together, but hopefully this space where we are creating community with each other will be a learning space, and one where we can share each other, share our expertise with each other, and share our humanity, right, with each other as well. So with that being said, oh, and just quickly, my name is Maria Ruiz Martinez. I was a teacher in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for many years before I made the tough decision to pursue my PhD, but I'm glad I did it. I'm very blessed to be working with the Literacy Squared team. I've been working with them for, I believe, 3 years now, and it's just been such a privilege to work with the team. So I want to go to our next slide, because we want to know how you're doing today. Over the course of last year, with the increase in Zoom meetings and webinars, meme check-ins became actually quite popular to get a sense of how each one of us is entering the space. you're important and how you're feeling is important, and we want to make space to acknowledge that. So using the chat, tell us which mean square, which number or numbers reflects how you are feeling right now. So I'll give you a chance to look at the different squares with the different meme characters, animal characters. And feel free to just type in the chat how you're feeling. I'm seeing, oh, lots of 7s. 3, definitely. Absolutely, I see a 1, 9.
Alina, I'm holding you, that 9. I know that feeling too.
Yes, definitely.
Some of you are exhausted, I get it.
And that number 6 with so much on your plates, and how do I deal with this all?
Yes.
Which, speaking of, Maria, excuse my interruption here, but we just want to acknowledge that if you, we hope everyone can be as present as possible, but we acknowledge you have families and are dealing with after school responsibilities. So please take care of your needs as need be.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, thank you. Thank you for participating. So as we begin our time together today and tomorrow, please know that we value, like I said, not only your expertise as an educator, but also your whole self. And so we're hoping you bring that with you during our time together. So we're very much looking forward to exploring these topics with you for today and tomorrow. Today's webinar may look and feel a bit different from our other PD webinars because we do feel an urgency to share this content with you in the limited amount of time that we have together. If you've been joining our PDs before, you know that this will be our last time together. So you'll see that we've allocated more time to share content and for planning, and a bit less for interactive small group work. So today's session is focused on planning in a paired literacy model. I know that as an elementary school teacher, planning lessons to teach both Spanish and English was always very tricky. In fact, I probably have to admit, I did not do a good job at it because I always found it so challenging to connect Spanish and English literacy without being duplicative or just repeating what I did in English to Spanish. And part 3 of the Literacy Squared book discusses how we can connect both language environments through bilingual texts, literacy objectives, themes, genre, but what does that actually mean or look like? And so that's what Sue and Jody will cover today. So what is paired literacy? So paired literacy is an approach to biliteracy instruction in which students learn to read, write, speak, listen, and process in 2 languages simultaneously beginning in kindergarten. Instruction is not duplicative, but cohesive and coordinated across languages. So first, oops. So to start, Sue will share why is it important to connect to language environments and when doing paired literacy, and she will discuss some of the supporting research around that, and then Jody will go through the how. How do we actually begin to create a paired literacy unit? So she'll walk us through the process. So with that being said, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it over to Sue.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to pick it up from there. Let me. You can't see it, can you? Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. I've got a little, just give me half a second here to get more organized around this. Okay. Fantastic. So, we had the question earlier, like, is this just going to be what we've done before? And certainly we always spiral back. So we make sure we know that our foundation is the same, and then we extend and move beyond. So a little bit of this will feel repetitive, and that's okay. We think it's important. So as Maria was saying, today is our last time together, which gives us a little bit of a sense of not today, I'm sorry, today and tomorrow, but it gives us a sense of urgency, which means we're going to talk at you a little bit more than we would like, because we're so afraid of putting you in groups and then losing all our time, and the information is so very important. That said, we really want you to type in the chat or to unmute yourselves as we move through today, ask questions, offer your insight and your experiences for the good of the group. We think that's really important. I do not have the chat up in front of me, so I'm going to ask my colleagues if something arises that you'll let me know, since I'll get it up later.
I will keep an eye out for you, Sue. And also, if anyone has any issues or troubles accessing things, you can write me privately, or Maria privately, or Ms. Valderrama privately. We can help you out.
Perfect. Thank you. So a key question for today and tomorrow is the one you see here. Like, why is it so important to make connections between Spanish and English for bilingual students? And that question really undergirds everything in a solid bilingual education, right? So we need to be able to answer it, not just for ourselves, but for our community members, right? Like, I'm going to give you 10 seconds right now just to think, like, if I were on an elevator and the superintendent said to me, how are you planning across languages? Or why is it important to connect Spanish and English? How would you respond? And I'm going to ask for 3 people to share out in a moment. So really give it a second. Like, how would you answer this question? And in the meantime, I'm going to try to figure out how to get my chat up. I don't know why I can't.
Your chat might be hidden.
Yeah, it is. And I usually know how to find it, but here it is. I got it. Okay. I can at least see it now, which is good. Volunteers, would someone be willing to give us your 30-second elevator speech? You're get in on the first floor with the superintendent. They want to know why connecting Spanish and English are important. What might you say? How might you respond?
I don't know if you can hear me. My microphone, I just realized it's way over there.
I can hear you.
Okay. So I would say that it's important to make connections between the languages because they coincide so much, and those connections actually help the student learn each language, whether they are English language 1 or Spanish language 1. Those connections help the other language, the one that they're learning, it will bring it up to the same level as their first language.
I love that. We get it's so convoluted sometimes trying to say L1 and L2, right? And who we're talking about, and especially in dual language environments. But what I really love about what you just said, Gomez, is that it's not just one language to the other, but that it's a bi-directional process, right? That Spanish helps with English, but English also helps with Spanish. And I have really specific examples in my own life of where knowing Spanish, even though I'm very much a sequential bilingual, has helped me with my English, right? And that's my first and stronger language. So thank you for that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I don't know about 30 seconds, but I'm thinking so that nothing gets lost. They can communicate either way, whatever it is you're feeling. You know, if you can't make the connection, it's going to get lost, your thoughts.
And
So
all
just
of
be a better
learning,
communicator.
all of learning is connecting, right? We're always building from the known to the new. And so sometimes what we know in one language, and we don't stop knowing it when we're in the other, but we do need to make the connection. We need to build the language so that we can communicate what we know. I've often said, like, if you pick me up and put me in China where I don't speak a word of Chinese, not any version, Mandarin, anything, I still know the digestive system, right? You don't have to reteach me the digestive system. You need to teach me the language that goes with the digestive system so I can show you what I know. But in connecting and thinking about languages, we honor our students, right? And what they know, and in whatever language they learned it. And you use the word feelings, which I also really appreciate, because so much of schooling is socio-emotional, right? And some of what we know, how we're feeling affects whether or not we can learn. And we need to tap into that all the time also. One more person?
We have one in the chat, Sue.
Oh, okay.
And this is from Edith, and talking about the importance, the validating the bridge between both. And she says that, I don't know about you all, but so many times, even as an adult, I struggle to find that word or phrase because I'm still working on bridging both languages. Excellent response, Miss Oran.
Absolutely. I will tell you, it's funny because we also know as bilinguals that we have to speak to our audience, right? And my mother visited me last week. My mother is not bilingual. She's quite monolingual in English. And I can't even remember what the word was, but there was a point that I had to like hold back for a few seconds because the only word I could think of was in Spanish and I knew she wouldn't get it. And I had to like really stop. Like it took some work. So it's really nice when you're in a bilingual environment when you can call upon your entire linguistic system and know that you will be understood. Just huge. Thank you for that. That's huge. Those were lovely answers. It is, again, really important that we are able to do that. So, another question, another way we might think about this is to say, how can we use what emerging bilingual children know in their two languages to set a trajectory toward biliteracy? And that's what we're looking at over today and tomorrow, right? We're trying to establish thought patterns that help us as educators to guide our planning. And these should help guide all of our decision making, right? So what you see here on the screen is the Literacy Squared Holistic Biliteracy Framework, which you have seen many, many times previously. But if we're gonna plan well, we need to revisit it often, and we need to review what it means for our planning. So in particular, I really want you to consider the relationship of Spanish language literacy to literacy-based ELD. And when you look at it, like, what are you seeing? What do you notice? And so I'm going to ask right now that you just type in the chat. What are you thinking when you look at the graphic? How is it informing what you do right now in your classrooms as you're planning? So just type in the chat. Thank you, Jody. It sometimes helps to just walk yourself through it in your head. What does each little quadrant mean? How are things connected? What is the relationship? You're all very quiet. I'm usually good at wait time, but even I'm like, ah. Okay, it's fluid. It flows over and back and forth. It goes through both languages. That center two-way arrow is critical. Connecting environments. Most of today is going to be on that. How are we making sure that what's happening in one language is building upon and connecting to what happens in the other? And as Maria said earlier, or tried to say, that it's not duplicative, right? I also see connections between thought, writing, and reading. Absolutely. We know
And
there are connections.
Miss Tucker mentioned that there's those same domains in both Spanish and English.
Really critically important. When we started this work, people used to say, well, students really need oracy in English. They need them in all languages, right? Like there's a reason that those 4 quadrants are the same, that we need oracy, reading, writing, and meta language. And we have it in both, because even meta language, you would think is kind of between languages. Meta language is both about a singular language. I need to know how Spanish works, and I need to know how English works. And then I also need to have meta language about cross-language connections. Carlos, can you say more about the language coaching?
Well, it's that you being intentional and explicit to the skills you're transferring, how you're bridging, to be intentional about doing that and connecting the languages. You've got to guide them and coach them through it. Once they start making the connections and they start bridging the languages, it just takes off from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. These are terrific responses. We try to help make the connections and make the bridge as short as possible, says Ms. Rodriguez. That's right. If we scaffold well, we accelerate learning, right? We don't stay stuck. And so how are we accelerating as we move through this? So thank you for all of your responses. I'm going to move us along here. Let's see. Okay, so I have the sometimes thankless job of sharing a little bit about theory and research, because everything we do needs to be research-based and research-guided. And so I want to begin with this idea that learning to read and write in 2 languages is really different from learning to read and write in 1. The implication is that our pedagogies and our methodologies, which typically have been designed for mainstream white, English-speaking, monolingual children, are inadequate for the vast majority of our kids, right? We have to do something different. So the charge to us as a field is to determine which elements overlap and therefore will transfer, and which are different and therefore require explicit and focused instruction. So as we're planning, we always have to think about that. Do I need to reteach this? Or do they know it and I just show them they know it? Or is there something really distinct and different that I have to focus on? So I use this image a lot of a tandem bicycle to serve as a metaphor for this process. So imagine that you're starting out learning to ride a bike, right? But with the caveat that you have to coordinate it with another person, right? Not like most of us learned to ride a bike, where we got on and tried it out and we fell and we got up and we tried it again. But now we've got to do all of that, but we have to do it with another person, right? So the process, mounting, balancing, coordinating, communicating, would be substantially different than trying to ride solo. This is what we mean by learning to read in 2 languages simultaneously is different than learning to read in 1. A lot about riding a bike solo is the same, right? We still have to pedal, we still have to steer, right? But we have to figure out how to do that in conjunction, in coordination. So this is like, maybe you can hold this image even in your, like when you think about an elevator talk, like how do I say to someone it really is fundamentally different? If you say to them, imagine learning to ride a bike with another person, you can imagine that there has to be something really fundamentally different about it. Paired literacy is what we use, is how we talk about that. That's what we're going to spend a lot of time today on, is paired literacy. And it's based in the holistic bilingual theory. And what that states is that what is known and understood in one language contributes to what is known and understood in the other. So if that's true, we need to really examine our paradigms and pedagogies that insist on fractionalizing languages and taking them apart all the time. So what a holistic approach will do is recognize that the bilingual human being is not 2 monolinguals in 1, right? Information learned in 1 language is always accessible to the other. Now, think about my example earlier of China. I do not forget what I know about the digestive system just because I'm trying to communicate about it in the other language. And so this is, again, I'm big on metaphors. I love the idea of thinking about languages as if they're 2 rivers feeding the same pond. So in our heads, we have L1 and L2, and they feed a single conceptual reservoir. If you think about 2 rivers that go into a single pond, once they come together, they can never be separated into their distinct parts. We can never separate out Spanish from English again, right? And so I will always, as a bilingual, have a single linguistic repertoire from which I can draw features no matter which environment I'm in, right? And I can't turn them off, even if you ask me to. If you say this is English time, please don't use your Spanish. Even if I physically am not using Spanish, I can't turn off my brain. Those words are always there, just like they were there with my mother last week, right? And she's not a bilingual. She wasn't an appropriate audience for that. So these are the underlying principles that we always need to think about when we're planning. So what do we know about coordinating language environments for instruction? Well, we know that a teacher's job is always to minimize a student's learning burden or the effort it takes to learn something new. So learning involves recognizing patterns, forming analogies, making connections, reworking and refining relationships. That's true even if you're monolingual, but for bilingual students, the learning burden is lessened when we make connections across languages for them. And when we have direct and explicit lessons that help them to make that, as someone used in the chat earlier, that bridge, right? So our literacy environment has to be one in which all languages are valued and welcome, and that will increase the likelihood that the totality of a student's background will be activated, right, in service to language and learning. Often we hear that two languages should not be used in the same literacy environment. Right? There's concern that students will be confused or that they'll have insufficient time to practice and work at language acquisition. And what we know, actually based on the sink or swim approaches that were used 40 years ago, where we just threw kids into English, is that more time in English doesn't result in better language learning, right? It's actually this coordinated instruction that we're promoting that results in not only better English language acquisition, but results in bilingualism. And so what I would hope is that we're at this point, we've moved beyond talking about bilingual education as if the only reason to do Spanish is because they do better in English, right? No, the reason to do it is because we want strong bilingual, bicultural children. Right? Finally, or also, despite the fact that we often borrow liberally from monolingual research, Jim Cummins reminds us often that there is no empirical evidence to support monolingual orientations to instruction that call for language separation, right? And he further goes on to argue that separating languages all the time, not that sometimes you shouldn't, of course you should, but insisting on it has the potential to limit students' opportunities to develop powerful literacy competencies. So given this, it's imperative that we scrutinize our paradigms and our pedagogies, right? Rather than fractionalizing, we use a holistic approach. And then finally, bilingual teachers and students are fully capable, once they think about this, of using languages in strategic and choreographed ways to enhance and convey learning. And again, this is where we're going to focus most of our time today and tomorrow. How can we be strategic and coordinated across languages so that we have both accelerated content learning and also accelerated language acquisition in both languages? So if we move from research to effective literacy instruction, here's what we know we have to include. We have to have direct and explicit and interactive teaching methods, right? Rather than putting kids in workshop all the time where they're trying to figure out what's going on, we need to make the connections explicit for them. We have to be strategic and coordinated. Again, that's where we're going to spend our time today. We have to be sure, as someone said in the chat earlier, that there's a strong connection between oracy, reading, writing, and meta-language in both languages, right? So we're spending about a quarter of our time on any one of those, but they're all connected. They don't stand by themselves. And all of our lessons should be culturally and linguistically responsive and affirming. So again, just kind of moving slowly from the research to the pedagogies. this should also look familiar, right? These are the reading zones that we talk about a lot, where we're really trying to promote and think about cross-language pedagogies. So when we think about cross-language pedagogies, what we are doing is rejecting the compartmentalizing of languages, right? They are connected. So if I know that a child is an 8 to 10 in their Spanish reading, I am using levels 4 to 6 books in English, even if they don't test at a 4 to 6 level, right? Let's say you have a brand newcomer, because what we know is that a student who is reading at this level that's their reading ability. They know how to read. They don't have to break the code again, right? What they need in English is more scaffolding. They need more vocabulary development, but we're not holding them back. So we're really looking at assessment in a fluid way, where decisions we make in English are guided by what we know in Spanish. And decisions we make in Spanish may be guided by what we know in English. We don't look at assessment separately. We're always building on students' strengths. We're always looking at students as asset-based. One of the things that Geneva Gay says that I really like is you can't expect success from failure, right? Failure breeds failure. Success breeds success, right? So what are those successes we see with our students? What are those strengths we see with our students that we're going to build upon at every opportunity? And they may not show them in one language, but we can draw on what they've shown us in the other. There's no reason we can't. So if we have a student who's writing a 3-paragraph essay in Spanish and they come to English and say something like, I don't know how to write in Spanish, you pull out the Spanish and go, you know how to write, right? You know how to write. I will help you get there in English, but you're a writer. Once you're a writer, you're a writer. Once you're a reader, you're a reader, right? And we're being sure that we reinforce what students know in explicit ways, but we're not reteaching, right? We're not wasting students' time or our time. We don't have that kind of time. So again, back to where we started, right? We're doing paired literacy, meaning Spanish and English in coordinated and strategic ways within the holistic framework, recognizing that most of our students are born in the United States. They are exposed to 2 languages from birth, which makes them simultaneous bilinguals, really different than me. I talked about myself earlier as a sequential bilingual. I'm very much a sequential bilingual. I was born into a monolingual English speaking home. I spoke only English until I was in high school, and then I acquired Spanish. I'm a sequential learner. For years and years and years, a lot of our students were sequential. They're no longer that, right? The great majority, 3/4 of the students in bilingual programs today are simultaneous bilinguals. And so our pedagogies need to match that. And again, we are integrating and coordinating literacy instruction, including the reading, writing, oracy, and meta language across language. And at the end of the day, we have to hold students accountable in both languages. So that's on us, right? To be sure that at the end of the day, they can express what they know and can do in 2 languages. So that was a lot, right? That was a lot of information really, really quickly. And I want to give you a little bit of time. Oh, shoot, I forgot I had this before I give you a little time. Give me one more slide. So what does this mean? Like, what does this look like? We're always telling you like, oh, you need to do this and all this research and how do I take it into a new pedagogy? And so this, I think Jody put this together for us, but this is what a 1st grade literacy schedule might look like. It may not, yours may not look exactly like this, but just to give you a sense of how to schedule a day, right? So if you look to the left of the screen, the 1st grade overall schedule, you'll see that from 8:30 until basically 11 o'clock, students have literacy. Now, part of that time is dedicated to Spanish, lectoescritura, and part of that time is dedicated to literacy-based ELD, but the entirety of it is literacy. And so it's really important that we look at that block as a single literacy block, and then we think about what needs to happen where. Right? So when are we going to have modeled reading? When are we going to have guided reading, lotta? When are we going to do collaborative work? Like, it all has to happen, but doesn't have to all happen in one language. So you'll notice on this slide in the writing in lectoescritura, we take it to independent, but in English, we only go as far as collaborative. That's okay. Students are still getting independent time. They're just not getting it in both languages. We don't have to do everything in all languages. We will get there, right? By the upper grades, they're doing a lot more independent in the other language. But in the early grades, we do more independent in Spanish and a little less in English.
And
So-
not all of this has to happen in one day.
Ever. And so we're going to talk about that more tomorrow,
Yeah.
about how to look at this across a week, not across a day.
I didn't want anyone having a heart attack here, looking at that schedule, be like, how am I going to do all that in 60 minutes?
No, and how do you plan for that? It's an impossibility, and it's also not an expectation. But because that was so much, and because you might be having those reactions that Jody just alluded to, I want to give you a little bit of time in a breakout room. I'm going to give you about 7 minutes in a breakout room, and what I'm going to ask, I'm going to put you in hopefully groups of 5. We'll see how it breaks out. Around 5, I would like each person in the group to take the time to have 1 minute to state, based on all this information, it was a lot, I understand, what resonated with you, what questions do you still have, what connections are you making to your current work in San Antonio, and did you have any ahas, right? So first you go around as a group, everyone has the opportunity to speak. Then collaboratively, I want you to go to a Padlet. Jody just put the link in the chat, and I want you to pick a GIF that represents how your group, how your comfort you feel about the research, and or a question. And so I'm going to show you what that looks like really quickly. Most of you have probably done Padlet. Can you see my Padlet right now?
Yes,
Yes.
so we can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so when you go to the Padlet, you've likely done this before. Hold on, I have to get you out of the way. But you go to this plus sign down here and click on it. And then to get to the GIFs, you do this little magnifying glass. So if I click on that, I can go here and you'll see I have a number of things I can choose from. But if I choose GIF, I can search for like, say what? Like, I don't get it, right? And do this and see what comes up. Right? And then I can go through and go, yeah, I feel like her right now. Like, what is she talking about? Right? So you can post that, and then you can post a separate one that has like, I have a question about this, right? Like, I'm feeling confused, but I have a question. But this it's just another like way of taking the temperature of how all of this information is landing on you in your particular district at your particular grade level. Are there any questions about that? Okay, I'm going to try to get you into breakout rooms. Again, about 7 minutes, maybe a little less. I'll be watching the Padlet. Once I see it populating, I'll probably pull you back. Here we go. Let's do this. Okay. Okay, I'm going to set a quick timer just so I don't
Okay,
let it get away from me.
that's good.
So Jody, I'm cutting it. Okay, so did everybody get into a breakout room that wanted to be in one?
We have 5 of you here.
Sometimes people like stepped away. I understand that too, right?
Okay.
If you need me to put you in a room and you don't see a link, just like unmute and let me know. So Jody, we're going to be a little bit over on your time.
Okay.
We may need to give more time, a little more time for them at the end tomorrow for planning. We'll just figure it out.
Okay. Do you want me to share my screen now?
Probably, yeah. Let me stop sharing.
Okay. And then let's see here.
And I'm going to go to the Padlet because I want to be able to see. Oh. Oh, let me take her off. Trash.
I have 2 screens now and it's still a lot to It's still a lot on your screen.
I'm telling you, I'm still working with one, and it's hard. It's very
It is.
hard.
It's really hard. Okay, so I'm just gonna play with this for a second. Share, and I gotta move you all. And
So it looks like there are 3 or 4 people in each of the rooms.
okay, and it looks like there's nothing on the Padlet yet.
No, but there probably shouldn't be, because they were supposed to talk for the first 5 minutes.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Oh, do you have the Padlet embedded, or you just clicked on it?
No, I just clicked on your link.
That's awesome.
I have it's
Perfect.
just another window. I'm just
So
sharing
I don't-
part of my screen.
I don't know about breakout rooms for later, but I'm just telling you so you know that I did 6, like I was just guessing, and they only ended up with 3 or 4 people. So we probably want to do fewer breakout rooms so they have a few more people to talk to
Okay.
later.
I don't think I have any, I really don't think we'll get to the application piece. So I think everything I have is just chat
Okay.
for today. And so until the end, if they want to put them in grade levels, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Joined
Well,
us, I don't
we'll
know.
make sure we put that time later. I'm going to assign the new person to a room. Let's see. Okay.
Hi, Miss McClendon. We're in groups right now, so we'll send you to a breakout.
I think I did. Did she get, yeah, she
Yes.
got it.
Okay, and then we're taking a break. I kept thinking it was 5, but that's San Antonio time. So 4 o'clock our time.
Yes.
Break. Okay.
Yes. And I'll private message you if it looks like you're in a place that like you're not paying attention.
Okay.
to.
I don't know why I'm so uneasy about these 2 days. It just seemed I had time, but just slightly uneasy. Maybe it's the wind. Wind makes
It
me
is. The wind is crazy.
Okay, still nothing on the Padlet.
No, I'm watching.
But my parents are here, so they are babysitting.
Your puppy. That's
Aw.
great. Jody, I just sent you a quick message.
Yep, got it.
Okay.
Thank you for the reminder.
I'm going to send the same one to Maria. Okay, well, I'm watching. Let's see, it's been 4.5 minutes. I'll do a blast. Oh, I can't do a blast. Can I do a blast?
Oh, are you not?
Hold on, I'm looking. Breakout rooms. I can. I'm going to broadcast everyone. 2 minutes left. Please begin. Padlet responses. Okay, so I broadcast that. It's a lot of information. Did it feel like it was going really fast?
No, it did not.
Yeah, it was great information.
Okay, I get really I worry so much about the sit and get aspect, like it's a lot. But I feel like if you don't have those sort of boundaries and ways of thinking, the whole planning falls apart.
Yep. Yeah, I worry about that too in the next upcoming pieces, but it is, unfortunately, you have to get a lot of ideas in order to brainstorm more out,
You should say that. I think that's really important.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hard part about planning. Without some ideas to get you started, it just really hard.
I had to see a lot before I could really delve into planning.
Like I said, it took me really years, and then having to do it weekly. And that's what finally helped me.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And you also have ways that everyone has their own way. I'll say this in the presentation, but you have ways to start like everyone has their own way into the planning that
Mhm.
starts to make sense to you.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's like the conversation we were having the other day. Like Sandra and I have different approaches. We end up in the same place. We just really we have different entrance points.
Mm-hmm.
Although we both always start from the end. Always, we always know like what is the outcome we want from students in each language.
Mm-hmm.
But I work my way all the way through a language, and then I scaffold on in the other, and she does the back and forth.
Mm.
Okay, well, now it's been 7 minutes and there's nothing in the Padlet.
What did you broadcast out? I don't think I saw anything.
I gave a 2-minute warning. Well, it just goes into the breakout room, so you wouldn't get it. Basically, I said 2 minutes left, please start, using the Padlet. But there's nothing, which actually means they have plenty to talk about, right?
Maybe.
Oh, I see it. Is that your cursor?
This is my cursor.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? I don't see a plus sign.
I'm wondering, I'm going to actually refresh. I wonder if nope, there's still nothing.
Oh, wait, why don't I have a plus sign?
I don't know.
I wonder if that's why.
Well, I'm looking at my actual one and there's nothing there.
This is the link I clicked on from our chat.
Huh. Okay. Let me
go to it again.
Monica is in room 3.
Yeah,
let me drop into a room and just make sure, see how it's going.
Okay. Yeah, I don't
I'm
have a plus sign. I bet you they can't. There's something about it where they can't.
I'm gonna go ask.
Okay. I wish I would have paid attention to that earlier. I didn't even notice.
I didn't notice either. And now that I'm trying to do it on my own screen, I'm not seeing it. I just see the Padlet, but not, like you said, the plus sign.
You probably see what I see because I'm in it.
Yes.
I wonder if you have to be logged into it. Let's see if I log in, what happens. I don't know. I think I have a Google one. Hello, Mr. Jimenez, welcome. We are just waiting to get started here.
Yes.
Oh, you're coming.
I called them all back, Jody. They were having the same issues. So I don't know what I did wrong on the settings. I've used these a bunch, but.
Yeah, the Padlet didn't work that well.
It's really funny because I was like, no one is typing. This is really strange. Okay, well, that's okay. We can just do a quick share out, at least of I can't tell how many people are back in the room yet. Well, only 11.
11.
But folks are coming. All right, we're getting there. Okay, I think we're close to back. So first, my apologies. I have no idea what happened. But on our end, I kept watching the Padlet and I was like, this is very strange. Like no one is typing. And I finally dropped into a group. They're like, we can't. So I've used Padlet a bunch. It's usually great. I don't know what I did differently today. But if you have a question or an aha, that came up for your group that really resonated, could you just type it in the chat real fast? Well, we won't spend more than 3 minutes on this because I really want to give Jody time to help you really think through the cross-language piece. But I would love to know like questions or ahas. And sometimes I ask district leadership to help answer questions because sometimes it's very specific to your district. So Carlos says the ahas were a big deal. I wonder if there's a particular aha. Nothing? Y'all were
I'll
good.
share, Sue. So one of the things that, we discussed in my group was, how in SAISD, we kind of have the basic groundwork already in the work. So we think about having the time mapped out for the opportunity to do cross-curricular connections. And even the schedule you shared earlier about, how you have a broken up the literacy block, having your Spanish and having your English block. So we're lucky enough to have those pieces in place where we're implementing, the biliteracy units, so we have a lot of the groundworks done. It's more of working on the implementation,
Right.
of making it, all across the district, having all the pieces fluid and on the ground running.
And it is, so that is, I mean, I love that you say that because I've known this about San Antonio. I will tell you, because you're not all at the conferences when I attend conferences, but often like Dr. Hernandez, right? Olivia will be in the audience and she'll be like, well, let me tell you what's going on in SISD. And I love it because like you really do have so many pieces in place. Like you're starting from a really different place, and the planning, like to get all the pieces in place, as you were just saying, takes time. It takes a coordinated mental way of thinking about it, and then always applying that. And that's really what these 2 days are about, is like, what are we thinking about as we do these planning?
Right. And I think another thing, moving forward, we know that we're in a different world. And I think that that's kind of where I know the teachers that I talk to are kind of in that phase where, a year ago, they were getting the hang of it. We were running with it. And then COVID, and then, we're now trying to find the balance between, we have both virtual and in-person students, and the time. And so, these are all very COVID situations, but
Sure.
we're still trying to manage and have that balance so that we continue to push for biliteracy.
So, and these are such unique times, and they're going to go away. We're all going to have a vaccine and it's going to be okay. Like I have to believe that, but I also know, and I just want to go back, like Maria said, let's bring our humanity into the room. I also know that what is being asked of teachers and students and families is tremendous right now. And we have to treat ourselves with grace and understand that there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of positive that's happening. It may not be the same learning that would have happened face to face, but what I would encourage you to think about is to think more broadly about what counts as learning. Think about all the technology that both teachers and students know now that they didn't know 6 months ago, and probably wouldn't have been taught in a face-to-face environment, right? Like that's a positive. Think about the time kids have had with their families that they wouldn't normally have, and the sorts of activities they're doing with parents and grandmothers and grandparents. And that's positive learning, right? We need to look at all the things that are happening, not as a complete negative. There are actually some lovely things that happen. They may not get measured on the STAR exam, but that doesn't mean kids aren't learning this year, right? They're going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. But for now, we're going to do the best we can to keep biliteracy in front of us in this virtual hybrid world. So I'm looking at some of the comments. I just want to, because people have been typing in the chat, just state them. It really resonated with someone that we do not reteach, that we always build from what students already know. And it doesn't matter what language they learned it in, right? If they know it, they know it. And I think, really need to be cognizant of that, because we are never going to get more hours in a day, right? We only have so much teaching time. So reteaching something students already know is not a good use of anyone's time. Carlos says we've created 10 years of change in less than a year, right? Absolutely. This has been, I was telling them before most of you got on here, I get dragged kicking and screaming into the technological era. But I was afraid to put people in breakout rooms when I first got on Zoom. Like I'm not afraid of those things anymore. That's 10 years of growth for me. Trust me. It would have taken me 10 years to get there. What else? The challenges are great in trying to address both the in-person and the remote, pero las maestras, maestros les están echando muchas ganas. Pues claro, porque son extraordinarias, yeah, ordinarios. Perfect. Well, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to turn it over to Jody because she's really got the new and moving us on and thinking about connecting so that you can start building your own units with this idea of biliteracy. And we know that some units have been built for you, but they're not all done. And we all need to be able to do this work. So Jody, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for laying the foundation for us, because really, if we don't have that foundation, then this planning piece just really doesn't come together as we need it to. So before we start, we have all been staring at the computer now for a while. We have 12 minutes until our break, but I want everyone to take 10 seconds, look away from the screen, stand up, stretch your hands, your wrists, and I will count down so you don't need to keep looking at the screen. So look away, close your eyes, stretch your neck and your wrists, and reach up. This has all been really hard, this work on our backs and our bodies and our eyes. I'll give you 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So important to look away from the screen every so often. Okay, everyone. Well, here we are. Hang in there with us 11 more minutes until break, but I'm going to really talk to you. Sue gave you the why. I'm going to give you the how now. I'm going to talk about where do I start? When you very first sit down to plan a unit, a paired literacy unit, you're always, you leave these PDs and you're like, yes, I totally get it. This is awesome. I'm going to do this. And then you sit down, you're like, where do I start, right? Am I the only one here? Or do you all feel like that sometimes? Like, how do I actually do this? And really quick, yes, you will get a copy of the PowerPoint. I'll put it in the folder after we are finished today. You have a shared folder with SAISD, a Literacy Squared folder, and everything is going into that folder from today. So thank you for that question. So we know from everything that we talked about so far today, we know that we don't need to be duplicative. That means doing the same thing in one language and as the other. We have so much to teach kids and about reading in 2 languages, and we just have a very short amount of time. So we can't be duplicative. And for this reason, we also want students' eyes in text as much as possible. Our instruction should always be based in text because we can really take advantage of some really rich language and context and content that is in literature. So you always see in Literacy Squared, we always start with a text. And then lastly, we know that we need to make connections for students. So how in the world do I actually do this, right? So some people ask us, like, can we just buy Literacy Squared? Can we buy your books in your box and just like implement it into our classrooms? And we have, as you've seen so far, we don't do that for a reason. We use the holistic biliteracy framework because really we want you to be able to use your resources, your students' interests, your district mandates. We want these to be able to fit into the holistic biliteracy framework. And really, we don't know your kids, right? The kids that we're working with in Illinois, I'll tell you, are very, very different than the kids you all are working with in San Antonio. So that's why we don't have this boxed curriculum. And that makes Literacy Squared challenging, right? It makes it hard because you have to really do some of the forward thinking. But from experience, I have to say it's worth it. It's worth it to do that forward thinking. Your units are so much richer and they meet your students' needs. And it's fun. Actually, I love planning. But I just want to point out that and be transparent about the fact that the planning process, as you all know, being teachers, It's not neat. It's not tidy. It's not linear. Everyone goes about it in very different ways. I could sit down with Sue, even though we've been working together for so long, and we could have two completely different ways about thinking about planning. So I want to just acknowledge that there is not one way to go about this. There's not a right way. It's really this kind of iterative process where you get one idea and you start with that, but then you realize there's this other idea and there's this other thing I have to take into consideration. So you kind of start putting all these parts together to create your unit. But that being said, to put it into a PowerPoint and to present it to you all, I had to be a little linear creating this. So it's kind of linear in how I'm presenting it, but go about it however it makes sense for you. I also want to point out that what the reason this whole presentation came to be is that I, as a teacher and a coach, struggled. I struggled with really planning paired literacy well. And so over the years, I've gotten better and better and better at it. And I've worked with so many teachers on planning. And so what we've seen is that teachers have a hard time. So my colleague, Elizabeth Silva Diaz, and I decided to put together all the questions that we think about when we sit down to plan paired literacy. So what we did is we put all these questions into this guide for you, and I'm going to be presenting those questions today. So there's no need to look at this guide, but you do have access to it. In your Google Drive, your biliteracy, your Literacy Squared, there is a folder in here. And in here is the planning guide for paired literacy. Okay, so you can have access to it, but I'm not asking you to open it. You don't need it open because everything's going to be on your screen. But I don't want you to get nervous about, I'm going to forget all this, because it's all right here for you on this document. Okay, so that's there for you. And I will be throughout this presentation, you'll see this document and you'll see parts of it highlighted to show you what sections of this document I'm pointing to. Okay, so where do we begin? We really ask you to, or when you first sit down to plan a unit, really, we always have to be grounded in those standards, right? Our TEKS, what we need to do, always, we have to start there. However, sometimes it's not just linear, like we start there. In bilingual programs, we really have to think about resources at the same time, because as you know, we don't always have the same amount of resources in Spanish as we have in English. So it's important to think about, and I'll go through that here in just a little bit. So when we're thinking about standards, we really want to think about how those standards might play into literacy objectives. We really want to think about, okay, what are our big standards and what are we going to do in English and Spanish? It's helpful to break down the standards into those literacy objectives, because I might be able to do one literacy objective in English and one in Spanish, but I'm still getting at that same standard. And I'll give you an example of a concrete example of that in just a minute. Okay, so we want to think about those standards. We also want to sometimes think about those big themes or essential questions that are guiding our units. For example, if you have a theme that is, how do characters respond to major events and challenges? That starts to get you thinking about, maybe I can do this book and this thing in Spanish, this book and this thing in English. It's just a place to start, okay? And I'll show you some concrete examples of that as well. So, hold on just a second here. There we go. Okay, so the next question that you have these standards. You're looking at all your standards, and trust me, I've seen your TEKS. You guys have like 1,000 TEKS that have to be covered in each unit, right? There's so many to think about. So one of the questions that you have to ask yourself when you're making these decisions about what to teach in English and what to teach in Spanish is, which of these standards or objectives might require a heavier load? So what do I mean by a heavier cognitive load? So let me just kind of go through this a little bit here. So Cognitive load, so this all comes from cognitive load theory, and it's really just basically how humans process information in their brain. And if I could simplify this, I would basically divide the brain into two parts, the working memory and the long-term memory. So this working memory is really where all the information is coming in, and it's temporarily stored there as your brain attempts to process it, right? Like, what am I doing with this information coming in? And as teachers, Sue mentioned this earlier, our jobs are really to take this information and get them into this long-term memory. And many of you have heard the word schemas and in your teacher education program, like the patterns of information in your brain. We have to work to get that into the long-term memory. So this working memory, it's just little, right? Or in my diagram, it's little. It's really designed to be temporary. Can't hold a whole lot of information. And so, and if you think about bilingual learners, we're adding to this working memory by adding the language piece. So if I'm a bilingual learner and I'm not completely proficient in another language, but you're giving me all this information in that other language, there's less that's going to be held in that working memory and transferred to the long-term memory. So we really need to think about that cognitive load. And so what we can do then is to leverage that language as much as possible to lighten the cognitive load, right? So we can do that by making these connections. The more connections we make between English and Spanish, that's lightening that cognitive load to help more information go into the long-term memory. And so when you're thinking about standards, if you have a standard that's more abstract or that's going to be especially difficult for your students to grasp, perhaps you want to think about doing that in their stronger language and then making connections to English or their second language in order for them to lighten that cognitive load. So let's say you're going to do main idea for the very first time. You all, it seems simple, but you all who have taught main idea know how hard it is for kids to synthesize information and come up with main idea, right? So let's say you're doing that for the first time with kids or with a hard text. Maybe you want to do that in their more proficient language and then have them apply that skill to English. So it's less of a cognitive load. Okay. So I'm going to stop there with cognitive load because I'm cognizant of the time. It's 5 o'clock. We're going to give you a 10-minute break. Please stretch your leg, do what you need to do. And we're going to see you back here at 5:10 in 10 minutes. Thank you all.
Boy, are we all very consistent. Like we all came on at the exact same time.
Forgot I didn't have my headphones in. Were you saying something?
Oh, I was just saying we're very consistent. Like all three of us were on within about 15 seconds of each other. So I think you're going to get cut a little short, Jody, but I think we can shorten tomorrow too to allow more time. So I think we can make it work.
Okay, I just
Because
hit,
I took extra.
yeah, I hit a few slides, and it'll be okay.
Okay.
We'll see what we can. And
I knew you'd probably make adjustments during the break. I literally, my phone never ever rings. In the 45 minutes I was presenting, I got 4 phone calls. 4.
everything okay?
It's fine. My car is in the shop. They called to tell me it was okay. I'm getting a painting framed. They called to tell me it was done. I mean, it was just like, I just had a bunch of messages, but every time I was like, are you kidding me? I literally can go days without a phone call. All right, we have about 1 more minute. Do you need anything from us, Jody, from Maria, or from me?
I think so. Just
Okay.
be my trusty co-pilots as always.
I love being a co-pilot. This is my favorite job, is being co-pilot.
It's nice, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, people are.
All right, I'm going to mute.
All right, thank you everyone for being back. I hope you had a nice chance to, you probably were doing a million things that you needed to do in those 10 minutes, but hopefully it was a good break for you all. You all have a lot of stamina to stay on this late, let me tell you. So we appreciate it. It's an hour earlier for us in Colorado. So and it feels late for me, I can't imagine. Will it be dark in San Antonio by the time we end? It will. Maybe. Oh.
Yes, usually by 6:30.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I still see the sun through the window,
Okay.
so
All
it's
right.
still.
Good. Good. Great. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to keep going then, and hopefully people will join us if they're still coming back. But I had just talked about lightening the cognitive load. And the reason I was talking about that is because I was talking about standards. Okay, so when you first are looking at your TEKS, that's one of the consideration that you want to make, is thinking about that cognitive load, anticipating the cognitive load that you think your students might have when they're encountering the standard for the first time. Luckily, a lot of yours in your year at a glance is really nicely laid out, where it has the kinder, first, second, third. So you can see kind of what kids have gotten in the past. And that's a really nice way also to help you make the decisions around the cognitive load. Any questions about that? And if you do, you can unmute, you can put it in the chat, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Okay, why isn't my next working? Of course it's not working. Okay, so as I mentioned, when we first sit down to plan, we're kind of doing this thing of looking at our standards, but also considering the resources that we have, especially in Spanish, because those tend to be less available, less abundant, sometimes, unfortunately, not as good quality. Sometimes we have a lot of translations that are just like, not that great. So that's something we really do need to consider in the bilingual program, is thinking about our resources. There's a bunch of questions on resources that you can peruse. I'm going to talk about them here, but you can look at that guide to help you. How many of you miss looking through bins of books in the library? Maybe you can if you're in your schools, but I miss it. We're not allowed to be in schools right now. And I miss looking through bins. So first of all, what we need to consider is, obviously, this might seem obvious, right? But sometimes you'd be surprised we get so stuck on the resource that we don't necessarily pick resources that are the best to meet the standards that we're trying to cover. So we obviously, if we can pick a really good quality, rich book to help us meet the standard, you're going to go so much farther in your unit than if you just pick one that seems to be available, or that was given to you by your curriculum. It might not always be the best. So for example, so if I have a TEK, let's look at this one. from Kinder. If the Kinder teak says to identify and describe the main character, describe the main events, the problem, and resolution for text read aloud. So if I have this standard, what are some books, and you can type them in the chat or you can just think about them, but what kinds of genres am I going to use, or what kinds of books am I going to start looking for that's going to help me meet the standard? And I'll give you a non-example. I wouldn't pick an informative book about, say, volcanoes, right, to meet this standard. So any ideas here? And I'll give you my idea. And if you have others that spark from here, you can put them in the chat. But I was thinking that the Pepita books were great for this standard. And how many of you are, you're not all your cameras are on, but if you're familiar with the Pepita books, raise your hand or wave. And oh, good, lots of you, some of you. The Pepita books are all about this main character, Pepita, and each book, she has a specific problem. So this is Pepita talks twice. It's an issue with her dog. She doesn't want to speak Spanish, but then the dog won't listen to her. In a nutshell, this is Pepita packs up, about Pepita moving. And this one is Pepita and the bully and her issues with a bully. So it's all very predictable in a nice way. If I'm going to do a read aloud, it helps meet this standard of a main character and then a problem that happens for Pepita. Okay. Any others that are in there? None in the chat, but if you come up with others, let me know. Ooh, Olivia books, yes. Ooh, Rainbow Weaver. Ooh, don't you love sharing books? It's so fun to share ideas. I don't know, Rainbow Weaver, I don't think. I have to look at that one. All right, so let's look at this teak. For first grade, recognize characteristics and structures of information text, including features and graphics to locate and gain information. Okay, so the Pepita books wouldn't work great for this, right? But I want to choose some sort of book that has really, really strong graphics in there to help me meet that standard. And I have to say, nowadays with online text, it almost is easier in some ways because you can sort by these a little bit easier. I don't know about you, but for informational books, a lot of the ones I had in Spanish, they didn't have the best graphic features. So I was always kind of bummed. So you really have to, you don't just pick one just because, you have to pick one that is going to help you with that. And then in second grade, discussing elements of drama such as characters, dialogue, setting, and acts. Now, it might seem like this can very similar to this Kinder teaks, but I have this issue of dialogue here. If I have the Pepita books, which are great for setting and characters and acts, but she doesn't talk, it's all in third person, that's not going to help me meet this standard. So one example for this might be the Marisol McDonald books, that she has lots of dialogue in those books. Marisol talks a lot and other people talk. So that might be a better series to meet this text. Okay. All right. So that seems obvious, but you'd be surprised. And we really want to pick strong books. So as we're choosing texts, we really want to get our biggest bang for our buck, right? We want to choose a text that has really high quality language and vocabulary. Like I said, the translated text, make sure it's quality translation if it is a translation. You also want to make sure it's at the appropriate level. You want to choose a book that's sufficiently challenging for the majority of your class. So if you lined up all of your kids in order with their tests, their reading test scores, right, from top to bottom, I would want to choose a book that meets that upper quadrant of my students, okay? Because you're going to use this book. We suggest you use a book several times throughout the unit, and they'll have many opportunities to look at the book and be immersed in the book. You're going to do a lot of shared and modeled at the beginning. So we want to make sure even the students who are at the lower proficiency ranges have access to that higher level, grade level, rich text, okay? So that's really important. We also know that all children deserve access to books that mirror their own realities, the realities of their parents, families, and communities. So we want books that provide mirrors into themselves and their own realities, but also books that provide opportunities for windows and even doors to walk into the realities of other people, other lived realities. Okay, so it's really important. And Sue had mentioned in the chat as well, those culturally relevant texts, that's what we're talking about here. We really push you, urge you to consider more, especially, I mean, always, but it's so important to include issues of equity and social justice into your units. And even kinder, first grade, second grade, they all can, there's access points. And really, it's our responsibility as educators to do this. And then we also know that you have very limited time. So anytime you can make connections to that science or social studies unit that you're covering, it will help lessen the cognitive load for students in that content area. Okay. All right, so yeah, you consider your standards, you consider your resources, great. But then what, right? Like, what do I do from here? How do I start to plan English and Spanish? And in our book, we tell you that you can connect by genre, theme, literacy objectives, or bilingual books. But one thing I think that isn't as explained enough, or at least for me, it wasn't in the book, was really, how does that look like? What does that mean when you say connect by genre, theme, literacy objective, or bilingual books? So that's really what the rest of this presentation is going to be about. It's going to be examples, a couple examples for each of these to help kind of get your mind thinking about different ways you might begin to pair. It's not really examples for you to just pick up and take and do in your classroom necessarily, but it's to help get the wheels turning and help you start thinking and like, oh, yes, I have a book I could do. Oh, yeah, I could do this in my classroom. That would work for me. So that's really what this presentation is about. It's kind of the big picture to help you start to think about this. And I just want to ask you, was anybody in our presentation last January when we did this connecting language? I know some of the coordinators were, for sure. I don't know if any of the teachers were. You can do your little, your emoji if you need to, your camera's off. Okay, if you were, this is very similar, but I think it's really important. As I said, it took me years. I think it's important to keep seeing it over and over again. And coordinators, for you who are creating some of these units, it will help you as well to kind of spark some new ideas for creating the units. Now, your units, you're so lucky that your coordinators have created some units for you. It's so, I mean, we can't tell you, we go all over the country. And I don't know if we've seen any districts with the amount of units already kind of laid out as you have in San Antonio. You're really, really lucky. And I know that sometimes it can feel overwhelming as a teacher, like, or it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't fit really what you want to do or something, but you really should feel blessed to have a place to start. Your district has done a lot of the work. So we really commend you for all of that you've done, San Antonio. But that being said, San Antonio knows, the coordinators have been teachers. They know that it's sometimes you want to kind of change some things or make it work for your students. And that's another reason why we're presenting this to you today. We want you to take the work that they've done and really go from there and really make some, add to the lessons, change the lessons, make some new ideas and create from here, because you guys are just really at the beginning and you have, I mean, your milestones, you're miles ahead of many other districts, but you can make this even better. So that's why we're presenting you today. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples here. So we're going to start with genre. What does it mean to connect by genre? And when I talk about genre, I might have a different understanding than you have. So really, these are things like poetry, fables, fantasy, biographies, persuasive essays, personal narratives. Okay. Sometimes these are dictated by your standards, but other times you are picking the genre to help you meet the standard. Okay. So what does this look like? I'm going to give you some examples of what other teachers have done in their classroom. So let's say, and if you were lucky to be with us last year, you might have seen this by Sandra, Miss Bupalaski did this last year with you all. But if you connected by the genre of biography, for example, okay, so that's the connection, the big connection, the cross-language connection of genre of biography. but you're not going to do the exact same things in English and Spanish. Okay, so for Spanish, for example, you might use this book, this biography about Sonia Sotomayor, and you're going to use that book to meet these big objectives by the end of your unit. Okay, by the end of the unit, you want students identifying the structure of a biography. Then they'll use the Sonia Sotomayor book to note how the book is structured chronologically, like when she was a baby and then when she got older until she became a judge. That's chronological. Okay. They're also going to focus on the objective of retell. Okay, retelling the events of Sonia's life using that chronological structure. And then in writing, their final performance task is going to be to write a biography about a member of their family or a friend of the family. Okay, so that's at the end of the unit. That's kind of what you're looking for in Spanish. Okay, in English, you're going to use this book about Frida. Okay, Frida Kahlo. And you're still you're under this genre of biography, but here you're going to do something a little bit different, yet connected. Okay, so maybe your students you still want them practicing retell. They're going to retell the events of Frida's life using that same chronological order that you already taught them in Spanish. Okay, different text, different language, but same structure. So you're applying that idea. And then in writing, they're going to produce a shared writing to produce a class biography about Frida. Okay, so do you see the connections between the two, but how they're not exactly the same? You seeing how that's connected by the genre of biography. Okay, now, like I said, this is the end product. This is your end thinking, your end goal, right? But we obviously there's many, many steps in between. So if we look at Frida here and these reading and writing objectives, I just want to point out that you're going to think about that final product, and then you're going to do some backwards planning. Okay, so if these are our expectations to retell the account chronologically and also to participate in a shared writing to produce a class biography, that's when you start backwards planning and think, okay, what's the language students are going to need to be able to do this? What kinds of concepts are they going to need to understand in order to be able to do this? Then that's your teacher brain where you come in day 1, day 2, day 3. Okay, so So maybe for day 1, you're going to really start that talking about prior experiences. You're going to have them do oracy. Maybe they share 3 episodes from their lives with a partner. You're using specific sentence structures. The teacher is going to preview this Frida book and do a shared reading. And then in oracy, students are going to share 3 main episodes from Frida's life using those same sentence structures. Okay, what are the sentence structures for? They're the language. You're specifically planning the language that you're going to want kids to use when they're producing that shared writing. Okay, you're already planting it from day 1. Okay, then day 2, maybe you reread that book, you do a shared writing, you're going to add details to the timeline of Frida's life. Now here's where you're going to make a connection to Spanish. Besides the big connection of the genre of biography, you can also make connections within your unit, right? So maybe you use that same graphic organizer, that same timeline that you used in Spanish with Sonia Sotomayor, only now you're going to use that graphic organizer in English, okay, but with Frida. So do you see how you're lessening the cognitive load by making that connection for the students using that same graphic organizer? And then students are going to collaboratively add to the details using information from the text. And then not finally, but on day 3, teacher models how to put together those details into a paragraph. Okay, so you're modeling, and then you have kids collaboratively, they're going to add to it, and they're going to write the next paragraph using that graphic organizer from the day before. Okay, so and et cetera, et cetera. So do you see how these are all building up to this end product, these end products here? Okay, so I don't want to miss this part, but these day 1, day 2, day 3, this isn't what the purpose of today is. That's going to be more the purpose of tomorrow when we're going to do a unit demonstration with you to show you how the day by day looks to build up in a unit. But I didn't want you to miss that part. So we're going to keep just focusing on these expectations for the end of the unit, but just keep that in mind. All right, let's keep going here. Let me give you another example of connecting by genre. So this was an example of something done in a classroom. It was actually a 4th grade classroom. And we're connecting by the genre of fairy tales or Cinderella stories. So in Spanish, the students were reading this book called La Cenicienta, and it was written by the Chilean poet Gabriela Mistral. Are you familiar with Gabriela Mistral? She's a classic. She wrote this Cenicienta book in verse. So it's kind of like poetry about Cenicienta. It's really cool. And so the students, what they focused on is they explained the events of the text using specific details and examples from the text, and they also made inferences. And then in writing, they actually took, the book was written in verse. And what the kids did collaboratively is that they transformed that verse into a narrative. So they rewrote the story of La Cenicienta in a narrative form from the verse. So that was pretty cool. Now in English, we're still doing a Cinderella story, but here we're doing the Rough-Faced Girl, which is an Algonquin tale. It's an Algonquin Indian Cinderella tale. It's really cool if you haven't read that. And in English now they're focusing on this standard, explaining differences between various versions of fairy tales. So they're comparing La Cenicienta and the Rough-Faced Girl. Even though they read this in Spanish, they can make connections to it in English with the Rough-Faced Girl, okay, even though it's in English. And then in writing here, they were focusing on the standard of opinion, describing which version they liked the best. Okay, so drawing on what they knew in Spanish to write in English. Pretty cool, right? All right, I'm going to keep going with theme and then I'll give you a chance to digest. Okay, so let me give you some examples of theme. Theme is so fun. This is probably one of my favorite things to connect language environments to. You might connect by student interest. So let's say there's a World Cup coming up and the kids are super excited. Maybe you do it around there. Last October, I was in your district and one of your teachers was connecting by bats because it was October. The kids were really into Halloween. And so she did Stella Luna in Spanish, I believe, and as a narrative. And then she did nonfiction texts about bats in English. And so that was her connection there. So that was really fun. Current events or local interests. Maybe you want to talk about the snow that was happening and make some snow, right, in Texas, or the vaccine and the coronavirus, which people just can't seem to, or maybe we're just over it. I'm over it. All right. Also, social justice themes are really important. And I bring up this book. I just wanted to share it with you, Rethinking Bilingual Education. If you haven't looked at it, there's really great ideas in there by teachers who have created units all about social justice. So for example, there's a 1st grade teacher that created a unit all about farm workers and fairness. So she chose many different books in English and Spanish and talked all about fairness, which was a really powerful and really high interest for 1st graders, let me tell you. And another teacher, for example, did Afro-Mexican history for a little bit older grade level, but it is possible. There's lots of younger examples in there for rethinking bilingual education. Content themes, if you're already doing whether you're already doing First Americans in social studies or science, that's a nice way to connect. And then SAISD has created great themes for you guys. These are some of the themes that I pulled from your SAISD. So these are coming up in your next units, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, familias, tradiciones, ciudades. It's a great place to start. Cuentos de Cenicienta. Look, you could just start right there with one of these ideas. So that is a great place to start as well. So what does this look like? So I'm going to share this example with you, and this is a unit that is connected by the theme of identity and teasing. Okay, really teasing is big here. And in Spanish, and this is unfortunately, this book is really hard to find in Spanish, but Lalo is a book, it is written in English and Spanish. It's just hard to find right now, unfortunately. But it's Lalo and the Red Hot Chili Pepper. It's by Elizabeth Jimenez, who is Dr. Escamilla's student, by the way, which I think is an interesting tidbit to the story. But this story is about this young boy. He has really light hair and light skin, so everyone calls him the güerito. And his mom is a white woman from the United States. His dad is from Mexico. And his cousins always make fun of him. They tell him he's not a real Mexican because he's so light skinned. They're like, but if you want to be a real Mexican, you can eat this really hot chili pepper, and then your hair will turn dark and you'll become a real Mexican. So they're kind of teasing him and bullying him. And so he does eat the pepper, and you'll have to read the book to find out what happens next. So in reading this, the teacher used this book to focus on how characters react to challenges and events. Perfect event, or perfect book for that standard, right? And then in writing, the final product was to write an informative text explaining what you do when someone is teasing you. Okay, so pretty good. And then in English, we used the book René the Boy, which if you haven't read it, it's also a really, really cute book, and by René Colato Lainez, and he has a new one out, by the way, just putting that plug in. But this is still under the theme of identity and teasing. So René comes to school one day and finds out that there's a girl with his same name. And so embarrassing, kids are making fun of him, they're teasing him. And the whole book is basically how he confronts this, how he overcomes this embarrassment of a girl with his same name, okay? So in reading, the focal standard was to ask and answer questions such as who, what, where, when, and why, about key details from the text. And in English, they wrote a narrative in which they told the story of their name. Okay, so very different here in what we're doing, but you're still connected by this theme of identity and teasing. This was a fourth grade unit all about the theme of inclusion and acceptance. You have Me llamo María Isabel, and it's about this girl named María Isabel Salazar Lopez who comes to school, and her teacher really wants to call her Mary. And she's like, no, that is not my name. My name is not Mary. And it's all about her courage to confront the teacher and explain why her name means so much to her and why the teacher cannot call her Mary. So in Spanish, in reading, the main standard is to describe main characters using details from the text. And in writing, the students wrote a narrative text where they told the story of their name using descriptive details, figurative language, and a clear sequence. Okay. And then in English, the book was Out of My Mind by Sharon Draper, which is all about an 11-year-old girl who has cerebral palsy. She's a really, really smart girl, but she can't speak and she can't walk. And so her classmates think that she's not smart. And so the book is all about what she did to help them understand her condition. And so in reading, the main standard here was to make inferences about the text, especially the way characters felt about Melody. And then in writing, they wrote the next chapter to the book to describe what Melody's life was like in middle school. Okay, so very different, but under this theme of inclusion and acceptance. Okay. All right, so let's do a giveaway. I think it's time for a giveaway, team. So what are some upcoming genres or themes for your grade level? And if you have some ideas of great books that you might use for the level, share that as well. So when you are writing the answer, tell us your grade level, because we want people to be able to connect with you about your grade level, about your theme. So what are some upcoming genres or themes for your grade level? And if you can think of any, what are some books that you might use for the unit? And if you don't have books in English and Spanish, you just have one, that's okay too, but that'll get people thinking here. We have a giveaway, so you want to put something in there. You can even cheat and go to your SASD unit. All right, families. Oh, there's some good family ones. Dramas, 5th grade. Oh, Do we have a 5th grade teacher with us? Excellent, welcome. And
It's
if you're
pretty good odds with only 2 answers.
I'm gonna have to change my system here for pulling a number. Maybe I lost everyone.
Make them both winners.
There you go.
There we go.
Oh, we usually get lots of participation, and I know you know what your genres and themes are. You've been doing this for a bit.
Oh. Cuidándose,
Nice.
2nd grade.
La luz de Lucia. Lucia.
I bought that book for someone. Trying to remember what it's all about.
Mi familia y yo. Muy bien.
It's a great one. Your brains are, you're tired.
It's the end of the day.
Yeah. All right, well, let's see here.
You're 4.
To take out my higher numbers here.
Last minute, jump in.
Okay, everyone. All right. Click, clack, move.
moo.
Oh, I have 5. For which genre? For click, clack, moo. I used to use it for a writing genre myself.
Yeah, it's great for writing.
All right, I'm going to pick a number. I have 5
Story
in.
structure. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, we ready? I know there's only 5, but
Yep.
here. All right, it is number 1.
All right, first one to jump in. Miss Rachel Tucker, you are a winner.
Tucker, thank you. Thank you so much.
Are we gonna have her write to me?
She's gonna write to Maria. Maria's in
Maria.
charge of the addresses. So Miss Tucker, if you will private message, I hope that's enabled on here. I haven't checked, but if you will private message Maria with your home address or wherever you're most comfortable with us sending you the prize books, and we will send them to you. Okay. It's enabled. All right. Perfect, Miss Tucker. All right. Well, thank you for participating, everyone. And thank you for hanging in there. I know this is still a lot of sit and get, but hang in there. We have 2 more examples to show you, or 2 more examples of ways to connect language environments. We already did genre and theme. I'm going to still show you some examples for literacy objective and bilingual books. Okay, so hang in there. We're getting there. I know it's late in the day. You guys are rock stars. We really appreciate it. Okay, so literacy objective, moving on here. Okay, so literacy objective. Now, one thing literacy objective can be tricky because you're like, wait, I'm doing the same literacy objective in both English and Spanish. Isn't that duplicative? But if you think about it, there's often this big standard. So let's look at this standard. We're gonna look at this for the next few slides. So let's say that the standard is acknowledging the difference in points of view of characters, including by speaking in a different voice for each character when reading dialogue aloud. Okay, now this, if you break it down, and you do this naturally as teachers, you just don't always write it out in a formal lesson plan, right? But if you think about it, there's a lot you have to do in order to be able to do this. You have to identify who's telling the story, right? You have to identify which character is speaking at a given time. You have to know how to look at your text to figure that out. And then you also have to compare and contrast how characters are thinking or feeling about events. So these would be your literacy objectives that help you meet this standard. So sometimes when you're trying to pair by English and Spanish, it's helpful to think about whatever you're trying to get to. break it up into all the pieces that kids need to do in order to meet that standard. And then you can start to think about how those might fit in English and Spanish. Okay, so let me give you some examples. So if we're still thinking about this big literacy objective or standard, however you want to think about it, of point of view. Okay, I need to get kids to understand how point of view works in texts. Okay, so in this example, this in Spanish, they were using the book El Lobo y Caperucita by Aisha Rubio, which is a really funny story. It tells the story of Little Red Riding Hood, but in this version, the wolf is a vegetarian. Okay, so you can only imagine what this is like. And then the other book is called Para Cuidarte Mejor by Jimena Garcia. And in this version, Caperucita is trying to convince her mom that she wants to go visit her grandma, but she has this super overprotective mom who's afraid of, she won't let her daughter do anything, let alone walk by herself outside to go visit grandma. So it's a really fun book and interesting perspective as well. So in reading for Spanish, the focal objective was for students to identify and compare points of view of the narrators of each story. Okay. And then in writing, they're going to write an opinion piece about which point of view was more interesting. That of the wolf, maybe the vegetarian wolf, or Little Red Riding Hood, or maybe the overprotective mother. They got to choose and they got to write their opinion about what was most interesting. Okay. Now in English, this is a very different, they're still under this literacy objective of point of view, but very, very different. Here they were looking at texts about the Titanic. Okay, one of the accounts was written as a secondhand account. So it was telling like just your typical informative text about the Titanic. But the other piece that they looked at was from a survivor of the Titanic. So this person was writing a firsthand account from the first person about what I felt and what happened to me and what I saw. Okay, it was a really nice way for the teacher to show the difference in point of view. So in reading, they were comparing a firsthand and secondhand account, really looking at the language and how those were really differentiated in the books, in the texts. And then in order to really get at that standard as well, in writing, the kids work together to collaboratively transform a firsthand account into a secondhand account. Okay, so really different. But yet we're still working on point of view. Okay. I'm showing you another example of point of view because I wanted to show you how differently you can do this, how different you can take this big standard and still do things differently in English and Spanish. So in this example, the class was reading a book where this author explained why he thought the tormentas eléctricas were the best storms. Okay. And in reading, it was written in kind of a persuasive form. So in reading, the students had to identify how the author used his reasons in order to support his point of view. And then in writing, the kids wrote their own persuasive essay, convincing their classmates about what kind of storm they thought was the best. Okay. Now in English, they used this book called Hidden Wildlife. And this is a really cool book where it's talking about animal camouflage. And in one, it's kind of on the same page, but on one section, it's told the author is giving facts, like in an informational way about camouflage, but then presents a firsthand account where he talks about his encounter with an animal, a real life encounter where he found this animal when he was out in the wild. So in reading, the kids talked about the point of view in each entry. And then in writing, they wrote a narrative, and they wrote about their own encounter with a wild animal. Okay, so super different here, but we're still getting at that big literacy objective of point of view. Okay, does that make sense? Hopefully. All right. Moving on to my last piece here, we have bilingual book or two versions. We love using bilingual books in Literacy Squared, or two versions when it's written in Spanish and in English. Or you could also look at books that are the same story, but different versions. So this is, for example, The Legend of the Blue Bonnet, written by 2 different authors. So 2 different versions. Lots of different ways to use this. It can get tricky though. It can get tricky to make sure you're not being duplicative, doing the same thing in one or the other. So this was a first grade unit using this bilingual book called Abuelita Full of Life, Llena de Vida. You will see this book tomorrow, but we're actually going to show you a different way to use the book that I'm explaining now to give you even more examples. So after they read the book in Spanish, so they read the book in Spanish, and the kids focused on reading comprehension. They used picture clues and words from the book to describe the characters as well as the setting. And then in English, they wrote a narrative about a memory they had with a member of their family. Okay. Now in English, this was really interesting what the teacher did. She had the kids collaboratively write a narrative in the form of a reader's theater. So they had already read the book in Spanish, but then she had them transform it into a reader's theater, retelling the sequence of events in English. Okay, so using what they knew in Spanish, but writing it in English. And then they used that, that reader's theater in order to, they practiced reading it. And so they talked about the different points of view of the characters, and they used a different voice. They were working on dialogue. So they used a different voice for each character when reading that story. Okay, so you can see very different, but I can still use that same book and you can get so much out of one book. And then lastly, this is a unit that I did with a 5th grade class actually, and it was using this book called Cajas de Cartón in Spanish by Francisco Jimenez, or The Circuit in English. And I wanted to give you one example of a chapter book because some of you are using longer texts and aren't quite sure how you might use them and divide them by English and Spanish. Okay. So this one, we read sections of it. It really lent itself well because it's short chapters and it's kind of telling us a different short story in each chapter, but they all build on each other. So we read some sections in Spanish, and when we did, we focused on this this standard of inferring the points of view of the characters from the dialogue that they shared in the book. And then in Spanish writing, they had to write a letter to the owners of the farm, persuading them to improve conditions for the worker. So it was a persuasive essay that they had to write. We read sections in English, and using those sections, the students compared and contrasted different characters, events, or settings in the story using specific evidence from the text. And then they wrote a short constructed response comparing the family's new life in Mexico to their life their new life in California to their life in Mexico. Okay, so you can see even in this 5th grade book, I'm seeing in the chat you're asking about bilingual books. This isn't a bilingual book, but it's the same book in 2 versions. There are 2 in Spanish and English. So in a way, bilingual, and I'm still able to use it in 5th grade. You can really squeeze so much out of a great bilingual book, and there's some really high quality upper level ones as well. So when you get really good at all this, when you get really good at pairing, the last thing we want to share with you is that you can connect by more than one thing. You can connect by genre, literacy objective, and bilingual book if you want. So how many of you last year saw the lesson demo with the Ratoncito Pérez and the Tooth Fairy? Anyone? Okay, some of you have seen this, and this is connected by many different things. Okay, so the theme was all about losing teeth, very popular 1st grade theme. And there were several books that were used in this unit. One of them was a bilingual book. Now these other 2 were not bilingual books, but this one was a bilingual book, and it's called El Ratoncito y el Tooth Fairy, written in both English and Spanish. And then the teacher used the English and Spanish texts to hone in on this literacy objective of point of view. Okay, so this was all talking about different points of view. So in Spanish, the students in reading, they use those texts to identify points of view of the characters, especially this one, the cocodrilo and the dentist, talks about the point of view of the crocodile having to go to the dentist, and the point of view of the dentist having to work on the crocodile. Very scary. So it talks about the different points of view of the characters, the story elements and main idea. And then in writing, the kids wrote a personal narrative about when they lost a tooth. And they also wrote a summary of one of the books. Now, remember, this is a unit. This is taking place over many, many weeks. They didn't do this in one day. So there were a lot of books and a lot of standards. In English, they made predictions, compared and contrasted the books they read, including the points of views of the characters. And in writing, they wrote an opinion piece about if bilingual children should get money from both the tooth fairy and the ratoncito, or just one. So the kids loved that opinion piece. And they also wrote a short informative text about a tooth tradition that happened in another part of the world. Okay, so you can see all the connections here. This is a really strong way. This is like for advanced literacy square planners to be able to do this, but it's a good goal to get to. All right, so I just shared with you several examples of genre theme, literacy objective, bilingual books, and connecting by more than one thing. I'd love to hear from you, and we'll do another giveaway here just because I feel like we need it. What are some ahas that you had while I was presenting? What are anything you want to share about an aha that you had or a question that you have about planning for Spanish and English in a paired literacy model? Thank you, Sue, for putting that in the chat. Put my numbers back in there. So I have plenty of numbers for you all. Anything that resonated with you, or something, it could be something that made you think about, like, oh, I have this great book that would work, or I'm already doing this, or I'm
Right, I'm
hungry. What do you
seeing
think?
we can use the same standard across languages, that it's possible to use the same book, just with a different focus.
Great.
The connections between Spanish and English, it doesn't have to be the theme, it can be the tics or vice versa. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. You just want to be able to make the connection, right?
Yeah, this idea that you can experience a book in one language and then revisit it in the other language.
Especially for those of you who have little ones. They love to look at the same book over and over.
Really important to locate books that are rich in text and that can be used for lots of purposes.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes. I think this by Miss Otsuka, this making connections and understand the standard better. I think that's really something we try to do a lot, is present something in one language, but then have them apply it in the second language. That seems to really help them understand that standard better and across languages. Great. Thank you for these ahas. Good. I'm glad they were helpful. I hope it got you thinking. It really is fun. It's a lot of work. You guys, it's really a lot of work to plan a unit, but it is so fun. And your kids will really, when they start seeing those connections, it's so exciting. It's really fun. All right. So how many? You guys are going to help me count.
Looks like we have at least about 9.
Okay. All right. So I will go ahead and pick here.
Okay, last minute, jump in.
I haven't picked yet. I have my thing. I'm going to show you that I'm not cheating here. All right. I have 16, but I don't think we have that many.
I don't think we have 16.
Okay. Number 8.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, but 8's the same person who won last time.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll pick another one. We'll pick.
Sorry, Miss Tucker.
How about number 5?
Okay. I think that may be Carlos, but let me just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is Carlos.
No, give it to somebody else, please.
Oh, good. Buy a lottery ticket. Yeah, Miss Tucker. Okay. How about number, do we have 11 people? I don't think we
I
do.
think 9. No, not really.
Sorry. Okay, I'm picking again. All right. Trying to be fair here. 15 we don't have. All right. 12 we don't have. Okay. That was number 8. I put it back in. 14. Number 3. Number 3.
3. We have 3. Miss Rodriguez. No, wait. No, sorry. I started counting in the wrong place. Miss McClendon.
Woohoo! All right. Congratulations. You can private message if you're able to send Miss Maria Ruiz Martinez your address, and we will send you a prize in the mail, in the good old snail mail. All right, Carlos, I love your little comments in the chat. They are hilarious. Okay. All right, so let me move on here. All right, so what we want you to do now, we're going to pass this on to your content people at your district. And they've been really carefully planning your units to connect Spanish and English environments. So I'm going to hand it over to them so that they can talk with you just a little bit. But I want you to be thinking when you're in those units, how have your units in SAISD been designed to connect Spanish and English environments? So Mr. Carlos, I don't know if you are up here.
Yes, ma'am. And first of all, I'd like to recognize our instructional specialists that do so much hard work to put these biliteracy units together. If y'all can wave at everybody. There are instructional specialists. There's Clary, there's Monica. Yes. I know we had Lily's in there, yes, and Patti was there just a minute ago. But yes, our team has worked really hard to put these together, and I would like to share that with Claribel to walk us through it, because she is one of the original experts of our biliteracy frameworks.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. I had a hard time clicking that mute button. And in the chat room, in the break room, when we were talking about it, was one of our aha moments is having the teachers now saying, I use those biliteracy lessons, where before it was, it was new, it was too lengthy, it was too wordy, but having that paired text is so beneficial for the teachers. They know that they can pick those specific standards. And that's a big help. They don't have to use a lesson that's scripted. They can create their own, but at least the standard in the book is ready. So they no longer have to go around looking for it. Yes, it changed. This is year 4 for me here. And it's nice to see teachers already creating those anchor charts using the red and blue. It just comes naturally now. So it's nice. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Get the right screen up before. Sorry, my head has been in reading academies all day today. So getting back to curriculum. So we have our biliteracy units. Teachers already know that they can access our biliteracy units through the curriculum website. But if they go into our shared drives and click into biliteracy units, they're going to notice that we have all of the grade levels here. We've got specific folders in there. So if you click on any grade level, I'm going to click on 2nd grade. You'll see a folder for 2020, 2021. We have our lessons already there by units and by week. So if they click on, this was unit 6. I think we are on, I'm going to click on unit 6. So we click on lesson 1. They will already see that the lesson plan is there. It's in PDF and in a Word document. We do have the books that are there, or the text that they're going to use. We have some graphic organizers there for them. We've got some anchor charts ideas that they can go ahead and look for. They'd say that they don't have to be looking and digging. What else can I do? Oh, I like this specific anchor chart. So we've tried to do and give them as much as possible on there, so that they don't have to do any more searching or any more looking, you know, and we have that for all of our grade levels on there if we click on kinder. And I know that our 4th and 5th grade, those lessons we weren't fully developing, but we do have a specialist there that are creating those lessons. This year it's a little bit different with some of us being under the reading academies, and that's been our focus for this year. But if you go into that, all of the units are here with all of the lessons. Feel free to navigate just through here. I believe those are not in yet. Feel free to go in here and look to see what exactly you can use. But the lessons are already there. There's a lot of activities we have added in our lessons. And I'm going to open up one of the lessons. We have added the QSSA strategy, 7-step strategies in there. We have added exit tickets as well. So here is one of our 3rd grade lessons, and it's very scripted, it's very wordy, but then the standards are already there. The objectives are there, the language objective as well, and we've got a lot of resources that you can use. But like I said, it's completely up to you what you use, but this is already pretty much laid out. You can pick and choose, you know, what fits the needs of your students. But if you go into that shared drive of biliteracy, you can have access to all of these.
Thank you, Claribel. And that has been one of the, I guess, rough things that we've had this year with the wonderful COVID. Is these lessons were created for face-to-face, a regular school year, and there's all this information in there. But like Claribel was saying, you get to you can pick and choose the things that work best for your kids. As in, we're in this very different environment. But it, like Lottie was saying, it's all there for you, and hopefully y'all can find this very useful for your classrooms.
So one of the things that we were asked was to give you all time to talk to each other, and we still have 10 minutes left. So I think this would be a good time to put you back into groups to think about the implications of what you heard today for the work you're doing now. But what we want you to know about tomorrow is we're going to walk you all the way through a unit tomorrow, a 1st grade unit, and then give you additional time. So we'll come back from your groups and have about a minute or so, but I'm going to put you in groups right now really quickly without talking anymore. And then we'll pull you back with about 2 minutes left to just close for today, knowing we're coming back tomorrow and hopefully going to give you more time tomorrow to be together, to work together, to talk together. So I think I can do that right now. Okay.
Okay.
We're gonna have to watch the time super carefully.
Yeah, and I have
right up
this
on the end.
slide. I do have this slide ready for
Right, for the
tomorrow.
reading. And I would say just skim it because I will sort of cover that material, but just like I think it helps to have the.
Do you want to talk to the slide?
I probably could. I don't have it right in front of me, but
So it will be, it's just you can see my screen, right?
Yes,
I have this on here and then I have this.
perfect. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
And
I
I'm
think-
definitely going to work in more like interactive and some breaks and stuff tomorrow. I'll work on that tonight. I think there's just that sense of like, oh my gosh, it's the last time. There's so much to do and say. And
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't have the participants up, so I wasn't really looking at faces, but most people had their cameras off anyway, but
I'd
I
say
don't know.
about half, but actually like people look like they were writing. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I can only see half at a time though. I didn't have everybody. Like I don't have two monitors. So it's like,
Right.
it was fun
Yeah.
to see, Jody. I haven't seen that second half. I know you have presented it a number of times at Tabe and other places, but I haven't. I'd only seen the slides, so it was good to
Mm.
hear.
It's pretty, but it's a lot of sitting yet. It's the only bad thing.
That was today.
But well, even normally it's a lot of sitting yet, but it's hard otherwise because that's such a abstract thing that it's hard to have people interact with it without, you mean, you know what it's like to sit down and if you asked someone like, how would you pair by X, Y, and Z? They're always like, it's hard until you're actually in it. And
It is.
yeah.
Yeah, and I loved all of the books that you
Oh, good.
yeah, it was great. It made what you're talking about, the abstract, more concrete in terms of
good.
the examples. It was super helpful.
And a really nice job at culturally relevant text.
Yeah, some of those are ones that Elizabeth did. Some are from, you've seen them in the past. Like the Lalo. I cannot find that Lalo book. I have looked and looked for Spanish and I cannot find it.
Yeah, I have it, but I remember when it sort of disappeared off the marketplace. I think it's hard to come by.
We should scan it since it's no longer
Yeah, we could.
published.
And then we could give people access to it because that doesn't violate copyright.
Right. Let's do that.
Yeah, we should.
Do that, Sue, because I don't have it.
I'm pretty sure it's in my basement. I will look when we get off. In fact, I'll make a note to myself to go look. Lalo.
We could have Kathy give it to
Kathy has it for sure. I had it at one point. I want to watch the clock. I'm gonna call them back at 5 at I guess it's 6:13 there. The 14, that gives us 2 minutes. Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to have all the stuff up on the slide or do you want me to click it and have it come in?
Yeah, just put it up.
Okay.
I'm gonna do it fast.
Okay. And so the scans I put in their SASD Google folder.
The scans of the pages.
The scans of these pages. I scanned them in case people didn't have it.
Okay.
And I put those into their folder, which should be, let's just look. Yeah, they're here.
Perfect.
They're not the most perfect, but they work.
Yeah,
Oops.
it'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay. So Monica, tomorrow, do you want us to be sure to leave them a certain amount of time to actually plan?
Yes, that would be, I think, ideal
Okay.
for them to start practicing. Because if they don't practice, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, so should we tell them to think about text tonight that they could, okay. And then how much
Yes.
time do you think we should give them for that tomorrow?
About 20, 30 minutes, or do you think?
Perfect. Nope, that's fine. We will make the adjustments to make sure it happens. We always get a little bit nervous about giving time when we're like, oh, you're kind of paying us, and then we give them time, and it's just our own. It's our own mentality around it. So, but I will.
Then we can go into each of the rooms. All of us could go in and answer questions.
Absolutely.
And just...
We will do that. We will make sure there is time for that.
Thank you.
And Jody, I know we have the meeting with the SISD folks, and then maybe we could stay on for 5 minutes, the two of us. Maria, you don't need to.
Okay.
I'm going to start calling them back just because.
And you probably, Maria, don't even need to stay for this next piece if you
Right.
go. I mean, you're welcome to. For when we afterwards, we're going to talk with Monica and the team about next year.
Sounds good.
But I hate to take your time.
Definitely.
You have other.
You have the administrators at school and see what recommendations they have. Because it is.
Oh, Carlos and Monica must be in the same office.
Yes, we are. Yes, and we're answering different calls. That's why I stayed behind too.
I see.
So
It works. Well, I'm closing the rooms right now, so folks are starting to come back in. And we'll just talk through the last tiny bit and then be ready to come back tomorrow. Okay. Okay, it looks like we should all be back in the room. So hopefully you had time to just process a little bit with your colleagues. We are back tomorrow for the same length of time, but a couple of things we want to ask of you. One, we just want to let you know that we're going to be doing this paired literacy demo tomorrow. So we're going to walk through how will we use the book Abuelita Full of Life across language environments. What does each day look like? How does English build upon Spanish? So we will show you that in detail tomorrow. In preparation and just so you have the mindset around what we'll be talking about, we would like you to skim some pages in the book. You don't need to read them super carefully. We realize that, you know, it's late and you have to teach in the morning and then you come straight into this. It's only a handful of pages, but it's pages 44 through 49 in the book and 54 through 57. If you don't have the book, we have scanned them. They're in your folder. So you can just go into the SAISD folder and there will be PDFs of them for you to look at. The other thing for you to know is tomorrow at the end of our time together for the last 20, 25 minutes or so, you're going to have actual planning time. So be thinking about texts that you could bring that you might pair, or a single bilingual book that you want to bring, that you want to think about how would you use it across 2 languages. We're going to give you working time and we're going to pop in and out of the rooms to help you, to answer questions, to just push everyone's thinking forward. So be prepared to have some of that work time tomorrow. I think that's it. Any last minute questions from anyone? All right, y'all have been terrific. I know how hard it is to sit and I know how late it is there. It's an hour later there than it is here, but we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. And I'm gonna make that Padlet work. I'm gonna figure out what went wrong today. But we will see you here again, same place tomorrow. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
gracias.
Gracias.
Gracias a
Buenas
todos.
noches.
Muchas gracias.
Compartimos el Google Drive a todos. Si no tienen, por favor, mándenme un correo electrónico. Hay una área que dice Biliteracy Squared. Biliteracy Squared, January 14, 15.
Perfecto.
Gracias. Se fueron, ¿verdad? Todos.
Ms. Rodríguez, qué bueno que estás utilizando las lecciones. Yay.
Gracias. No, gracias a ustedes, me han salvado.
No, de nada. If you have any questions, did you get your grade already?
Yay! Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll see you guys.
Excited.
Have a blessed evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
You.
Gracias.
Buenas noches.
Adiós,
Buenas noches, María.
Buenas
Qué
noches,
gusto
María.
verla.
Igualmente.
Nos vemos mañana.
Hasta mañana.
Okay.
Thank
Whew.
you for joining us.
That was a lot.
Thank you for joining us, Luz. I wasn't sure if I was muted or not. I think I was.
Oh, I was glad to be here. Thank you.
Gracias, Luz. ¿Qué le parece?
Pues estuve hoy en HERF y pude visitar salones
Súper
y
bien.
es un reto bastante grande el que tienen las maestras ahorita, pero están trabajando bien duro.
Sí.
Hoy vi, me encanta visitar los salones. Y qué bueno que tienen este apoyo, especialmente que las unidades son flexibles, que no tienen que ir que semana 1, semana 2, semana
Yes,
3.
we're planning the biliteracy lessons, doctora.
Muy,
I
muy
know I
bien
asked
que
Luis about
pueden
presentation.
escoger
Should we schedule in September, October, January,
el
and February?
estándar que van
Or do
a,
you want them earlier, like the speaker sessions?
enseñar y luego
August.
escoger la lección que mejor pueda alcanzar las metas, ¿verdad? De los
Ujú.
niños.
Y además tienen que conocer a los niños muy bien, ¿verdad? Porque si ellos ya saben algo, no hay por qué enseñarlo. Aunque sea en la unidad, se puede saltar esa parte si ya
Sí.
lo tienen. Eso sí es importante.
Sí, sí. Muy bien, muy bien. Los recursos también, ¿verdad? Eso es muy importante. Me encantó esa sección del entrenamiento.
Excelente. Gracias.
Sí, lo malo es que ya, como dijo Jody, que no podemos visitar a las bibliotecas, ¿verdad? O
Sí.
tener los libros en mano.
Estamos un poco tristes, ¿verdad? Por eso, pero
Ujú, exactamente.
Pero
Bueno,
las bibliotecas en las escuelas están abiertas, como adentro de la escuela, the school libraries. Can you go in those?
I will check tomorrow because I will be at a campus again. And I will ask. I didn't get to go in the library today.
Okay.
yeah, we're not even, so schools, even if they're open, they won't let outside people in. So we can't go to a school library or a public library. Like we're really, I'm stuck with what's in my basement. And I went to my office and dragged everything home because the university, like there's no point in being on campus. All classes are remote at this point. But most of my children's books were in my office and I just boxed them up and brought them home. But they feel kind of old, right? Like it's been a while since I've been in a classroom. And so that part is I just wish I could get my hands on new books.
But Epic is doing such a great job. I keep
They are.
getting stuff on Epic. They're doing such a great job of putting new stuff up in Spanish, in English. It's kind of fun.
So I think we stayed on to choose dates for next year. Do I have that correct?
Yes, you're correct, Sue. We're just consulting with Dr. Hernandez right now.
Perfect.
We have Dr. Hernandez.
Please tell her
Aquí está la
hello,
literacy
hello, hello.
squad que
We
quiere
love
hacerlo.
her.
Dr. Hernandez is here. We were
The
talking
ghost.
to her.
Hola.
Dr. Hernandez.
Hi, I'm so glad to see you guys.
I am so happy to see you. How are you? Happy.
I'm fine. Okay, so now I know what Monica's talking about. Monica's talking about Literacy Squared.
Sí, literacy squad.
Well, what I'm going to do with both of you, I'm going to share with you the literacy plan.
Okay.
Can you invite me?
Yeah,
So I
of
can
course.
join you from.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Perfect.
Let me invite her.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's so funny. She had to see the visual to figure out.
That was perfect timing.
She's like, oh, that's who you're talking to.
She only has a few things she's dealing with.
Just a few. A handful.
A few things she's juggling.
Today is the 14th. Okay, I should probably pull up my calendar as we're waiting.
Carlos, I'm taking notes, Carlos.
Okay.
And then, I mean, whatever you.
No, that sounds great.
So I just wanted to see what are some dates that we have available for next year, and you guys too.
Well, I think, I mean, Jody, correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is our first group we're actually putting dates on the calendar. So it's very open for you, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Other than
excellent.
like
Yeah.
conferences. I know, so this is what happens, right? And then like the third or fourth group, we're like, yeah, no, we can't do, so this is good. The timing's good.
That's awesome. That's really beautiful. I think Dr. Hernandez might want something more this year.
Okay.
That's why I'm a little confused, and I said,
Oh,
okay,
this
come
spring.
over. This school year at the
Okay.
end, but I'm not sure she'll talk about it.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
that may be
There's-
harder, but we'll see what we can do with that.
Yes.
But next year, 21, 22, I mean, other than things like working around La Cosecha and those conferences and there, it looks like she's coming.
There's Dr. Hernandez.
There she is. She's still muted.
I'm alone now, so I can take this off.
Nice.
Okay.
That's what I love. Like I'm in my dining room and there's no one else here. No mask.
I'm getting a phone call. But let me just tell my colleague.
I'm looking forward to the day that I don't have to put on this mask.
I bet.
I'm sure.
It's gonna be a while. It's still gonna be a while.
Oh.
Día. En un año.
Yeah.
Okay, so hope I don't get off too much. It's 6:20. What time is your meeting over? I don't want to take over. 6:20.
We're just here for you right now. So
6:24. So I'm gonna share if I'm allowed. Am I allowed to share?
sure, of course.
Okay. No, but you know.
Oh,
sometimes-
position. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Let me
Dr. Hope, will you have the host?
I
Right?
do. Okay, hold on. I will.
Yeah, everybody's able to share.
I am the host. Okay. So I make her the co-host. Yes. Okay. You should be able to share now.
Okay, great. I'm gonna be sharing. Why don't I have my literacy plan on? That's why I can see it. Okay, here we go. Here's my drive, and I'm gonna. So I'm responsible to roll out a literacy program for the whole district.
Okay.
English and Spanish, monolingual, bilingual, all together, right?
Okay.
So right now.
Dr. Hernandez, I'm gonna just stop you for a minute. Do we want to keep recording this? I'm just thinking because you're going to release it to